That cloud again covering the hills and a few flakes of snow possible for the higher ground of northern England. But it's much milder for Wales, southern and southwest England, and here we'll see showers and longer spells of rain with temperatures up to 12 Celsius. Similar on Sunday, showers and mild air in the south, cold further north with some hill snow.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Are you ready for a great British Christmas?
Well, we are, because from Christmas Eve till Boxing Day, 6 a.m. till 10 a.m, we're not coming out of your chimneys, we're coming out of your screens.
Absolutely. We might not all be able to see our families this year, but it doesn't matter because we are a GB News family and these shows are all about you.
They finally allowed us to co-present. I can't wait. You don't want to miss it.
Absolutely. Happy Christmas, everyone!
Happy Christmas!
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into everything that has got you talking today. Now I'm very excited because it is my last show before Christmas. So I'm desperately on the hunt for good news. I've been taking a good long look today to see what makes us smile, what's festive, what's going on. I've also asked you on Twitter if you've got any good news that you want to share, so do get in touch with me. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. I want happiness today, I want festive cheer. I've also, I'm not going to lie, got my eye on a decanter of something a little bit special in that corner. I'm going to try and hold out there until at least 7 o'clock. Anyway, let's get into some good news again, shall we, today, because it seems that the UK government has finally got the memo that South Africa and other places have been shouting about for a little while now. And it is, as I say, good news. Omicron seems indeed milder than first thought. I have to say, though, it depends which data you look at, but it looks like there's up to a 70% reduction in hospitalisations. Yes, to me anyway, that is something to celebrate. If you look at the small print there, you know what it's like in some of the media these days. There are some people picking it apart and looking at some of the negatives, but I will focus first on the positives of that is for sure. And let me ask you this, do you know the difference between a town and a city? Don't talk to me about cathedrals, because that's not the answer. The reason I'm asking you the question is because 39 new towns are competing to be crowned a city next year. I wonder which will make the grade. And as I just said, I want it to be upbeat, happiness and festivity. So the last part of my show, I'll be looking at some of the things that have been making me smile today. Still have all that to come and more, but first, let's have a look at the news headlines.
Good evening, I'm Polly Middlehurst. 119,789 people have tested positive for COVID over the last 24-hour period. That's the highest level since the pandemic began, and it marks an increase of 13,000 from yesterday's daily record. Meanwhile, UK Health Security Agency research appears to show that an individual with Omicron is up to 45% less likely to attend A&E and 70% less likely to be admitted to hospital. But, they cautioned, due to Omicron's faster transmission rate, that may mean more need hospitalisation. Dr Andrew Preston told GB News there are still many unknowns about Omicron.
It does appear, at least in the cases we've seen, as you've just stated, that you do have a reduced risk of ending up in hospital if you do catch Omicron. But on the flip side, you've got a far greater risk of catching it in the first place. So how those two balance out as it spreads through into the older population, those with comorbidities, we still just don't know, I'm afraid.
Meanwhile, Labour is calling for the government to act urgently to support the theatre industry. The Shadow Culture Secretary, Lucy Powell, told GB News that the government's insurance policy isn't robust enough.
Had the government's insurance scheme, a very expensive scheme that it set up many months ago for the live event sector, had that covered all aspects of potential sort of COVID interruption, not just the eventuality of a national lockdown. And many of these productions could have found themselves covered by insurance, which is what you would expect if a theatre show has to be cancelled due to an outbreak of a virus across the crew.
Well, Scotland's Deputy First Minister says nightclubs will be closed in the country for at least 3 weeks from December the 27th. That comes on top of measures announced earlier this week by Nicola Sturgeon, which saw the return of additional restrictions, which include the requirement for 1 metre social distancing and a maximum capacity of 100 people standing at an indoor event. The measures are thought to impact 150 clubs across the country. They now won't be able to operate without appropriate social distancing between groups and table service. International news, and Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has urged Russia to enter talks over its military build-up on the border with Ukraine. It comes after the Russian President Vladimir Putin said he doesn't want conflict with Ukraine, but called for no further expansion of NATO eastward. He's been speaking at his annual news conference. Western powers fear Russia is preparing to invade Ukraine as early as the beginning of next year, which President Putin has denied. Here, children in England with peanut allergies will be the first in Europe to receive life-changing treatment. NHS England has secured a deal for the oral treatment Palforzia, which helps to reduce the severity of reaction to eating peanuts, including anaphylaxis. Up to 600 children aged 4 to 17 are expected to be treated this year. Currently, peanut allergies affect 1 in 50 children in the UK. Members of an organised crime group who stole thousands of pounds in a series of ram raid burglaries have been jailed. 5 men were sentenced after pleading guilty to conspiring to burgle 3 premises in Westminster in London last year. Officers were able to identify them using evidence from CCTV, phone records and automated number plate recognition. UK car production saw its worst performance since 1984 last month, despite a surge in demand for electric vehicles. The Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders said November was the 5th consecutive month of decline. It dropped by 28.7%. British production of electric and hybrid cars, however, took a record share, accounting for around a third of all cars made. Clarence House has confirmed the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall will spend Christmas Day with the Queen at Windsor Castle. It'll be Her Majesty's first year without her husband Prince Philip, who died in April. Buckingham Palace has also confirmed that a service of thanksgiving for the life of the Duke of Edinburgh will take place next spring at Westminster Abbey. That's all from me. Now let's get back to Michelle and Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, joining me, keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight, we've got Frank Furedi, the author and academic, Pimana Assad, Labour councillor, and Ben Habib, businessman and former MEP. And Frank, I asked you about the pronunciation of your name, and you said it in a very sophisticated manner. Did I replicate that? Did I do a good job?
Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. I was practicing in my head. I do like to add a bit of sophistication to Dewbs & Co wherever we can. And you know the score as well of this programme. It's not just about us and our thoughts. I also like to know yours. What is on your mind tonight? You can get in touch with me. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Lots of you, by the way, have already started getting in contact. I'm asking for positive, upbeat things. What's going on in your world today? Or what else have you seen in the news that has made you smile? Leslie has said Sunderland football supporters have, of today, raised over £63,000 for our local community soup kitchen, which will keep them going for a while. Good on you lot. Daz says, I've got some great news. Coldplay are going to stop making music as a band in 2025. Well, I think that's quite sad, actually. I do quite like Coldplay. Charlie has said he had potentially aggressive high-grade prostate cancer, which was diagnosed in March 2020, and after treatment, he says it continues to be undetectable. I like that, Charlie, and I wish you well with that. Raphael is asking a question about Christmas Eve traditions. That is a very good question, actually. I'll ask my panel about that later on, and I'm intrigued. It is indeed Christmas Eve coming up tomorrow. What do you do? What goes on in your household? What else have we got? Louise says, I'm already on the wine, and my daughter has saved me some double cream. Very nice. Do you have double cream with your wine? That would curdle, I think. I'm a little bit confused, so do send me part 2 of your update because I want to know what's going on. Matt has said that GB News has been his good news. I like that. Welcome, Matt. And Kathy says, yes, I've finished all of my wrapping. She says, I am so chuffed. Got to be honest, Kathy, I haven't even started mine. I'm going to do that tomorrow, hopefully, with a Baileys in my hand and some Christmas music in the background, but I haven't wrapped a single solitary present. Have you guys? Are you all done with your Christmas gifts? Have you wrapped?
No, that's for tomorrow.
Tomorrow, good. That you're a man like me.
Haven't started.
Have you bought any presents?
I haven't even bought any presents. I'm going to do it all tomorrow.
That's really last minute.
That is very last minute.
Well, I thought I was bad.
Are you more organised?
Yeah, Christmas tree's up, everything's done, and tomorrow's going to be very relaxed with the family.
Chill day, good. Anyway, should we talk about the news? The government, public health experts have said that the Omicron variant of COVID-19 is less likely to result in severe disease and hospital admission. Good. I'm really pleased we've finally reached that point because some of us that have been following this story will have noticed that this has indeed been the message that has been coming out of various different countries. But anyway, it's now been shown that Omicron seems to result in less severe disease for those infected with it. However, and of course, there's always a but. This is indeed the British media. The agency has warned that the new strain is more transmissible than previous variants, such as Delta. And therefore, you still have the caveat of people being slightly worried about hospital capacity, etc., etc. As I say, the results of this research are consistent with other countries and also that of 2 other early studies into Omicron by the Imperial College London and the University of Edinburgh, which were both released yesterday. Health Secretary Sajid Javid welcomed the latest data as promising, but, of course, urged the public to remain cautious over the Christmas break, adding it's still too early to determine the next steps. Well, I'm grasping that positivity, Ben. How do you feel about this?
Well, I think that is a wholly positive story. This is what we've needed. We've needed a variant that would travel fast across the population and that wouldn't deliver serious illness. You know, that is the beginnings of herd immunity. Even Whitty and Vallance, I think, have to admit now, if this doesn't result in the NHS being overwhelmed, which it shouldn't, if it doesn't result in that, I think this is the end of the pandemic. And so this is a really good
That's a
news.
bold statement,
That is a bold
isn't it?
statement. Yeah, I think this is the beginning of the end, if not the end of the beginning.
Oh, let's hope so.
Yeah, well, what's really good is that for the first time we can say that we can now learn to live with the pandemic. We can now learn to live with the virus. We now know that its impact upon everyday life is not as destructive as it was feared. And because of this, we can now gradually come to the point where we say, yes, we're going to have viruses for the next indefinite future, but we can get on with life. We don't need lockdowns. We don't need passports. We don't need anything other than common sense.
So what would you suggest then, that come the new year, we just kind of stop with all of this kind of, because we've still got the passports going on, we're still doing the mass testing of symptomless people. Would you do away with all of that?
I think that what we got to do is after Christmas, after New Year, we look around, we have a nice dose of common sense and say, why don't we just get rid of all this social distancing, mask wearing, and take a step at a time, and basically say, well, there are some areas of our lives, like old age, where old people live in care homes, hospitals, where we take special care. But other than that, I think it's very important that people understand that the new world is going to be like the old world. We're not going to have to continue to live like robots in the way that we're doing now. And that to me is really positive, because what the South African research has shown is that this is not really any more dangerous or any more risky than what the flu was in the past.
Pamana, do you feel upbeat and optimistic about this report?
Of course I'm optimistic about this. I think it's a good sign, but I think we should still be a bit cautious about it, because it is transmitting fast across the population. And as stated in your report, the hospital transmissions, whilst they might be down, more people might need to go to hospital, and that will put pressure on the NHS this winter. In Harrow, for example, Northwick Park Hospital, 80% of the patients that are hospitalised because of this new variant are not vaccinated. And I was just reading the paper earlier, and Sajid Javid was saying, whilst the 2 jabs might not be helpful, the booster jab definitely does help. So I think if people are feeling wary about this variant, I think they need to go and talk to people that they trust, and that they respect their voices on vaccination, and people should try and get vaccinated. I think that's the way to try.
There's talk, Pamana, in places like Israel, and even some conversations in the press today about 4 vaccinations. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's going to be a reality. We might have to have a vaccine every year just to make sure that we, don't go back into these kinds of other measures of lockdown and things like that.
I've got no
with
problem
COVID.
with getting as many jabs as there are available.
Really? So would you just go on and on and on and on and on?
If it helps, because what I'm really concerned about is having a free life. I don't want my life to be continually constrained by all these public health rules. And I want to get all these public health experts off my back.
So you would be repeatedly injected with something purely to get your freedom back? Is that what you're saying to me?
Yeah. If for example, I've been getting a flu jab now for the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm a diminished human being as a result of that. I'm still not sure whether they actually help me very much, but nevertheless, if there's a pharmaceutical solution to some of our problems, I'll take that in order to have complete freedom, because that's what really matters to me rather than anything else.
I'm an asthmatic and I get the flu jab every year, and I feel it helps me stopping getting that really bad cold in the winter. So I don't see a problem with us being vaccinated as long as it doesn't take us back into lockdown, because I think we're all fed up and we don't want to go back into these measures where, we're fed up of COVID. We don't want to go back to a place where it's impacting our mental health, I think.
See, Ben, I've got to say, I find us in a very peculiar position. So I'm not trying to change the minds of people here. That's each to their own. You can think whatever you want to think. I'm sharing my view, which is we are in a very, very peculiar scenario, which is basically, just keep injecting me as long as I get my freedom.
Do that.
But you don't get your freedom. We're already on the 3rd one, and we've got vaccine passports. We're talking about lockdowns. We're talking about restrictions. We don't even know if we're going to have New Year's Eve yet. So it didn't really wash with me, all of this kind of, I'll keep getting injected in order to give me my freedom, because actually, my freedom is not for Boris Johnson.
Well, actually, you're compromising your freedom when you give up the right to say no to a vaccine.
No, that's different. I mean, if you want to say no, that's fine.
Yeah, I think you should have that right to be able to say no.
I mean, I've never had a flu jab. I'm asthmatic too. I've never had a flu jab. And actually, I've never had flu. And I must have been exposed at some point, because I've lived, I think, right on the edge of what's been permitted during
must
lockdown.
be very lucky.
I'm very lucky, or I just don't have the DNA that gets it. And, you know, and I want to live without being injected. I want to have all my freedoms, all my liberty. And if I get ill, then I expect, after having paid taxes all my life, to be treated by the NHS without any prejudice against me. And that's my view. I know that's a kind of bold statement, but I think we should be allowed to do whatever we want, whenever we want, within the realms of legal norms.
But can't we agree that you do what you want, I do what I want? You know, there need not be any rules that stop any of us getting on with our lives.
Well, but we live in a society.
Decision.
We have to look at protecting each other. It's not just about... I understand your individual choice, and I respect that. But at the end of the day, we live in a society where we might not choose to have that. But the truth is that you could carry COVID and you pass it on to someone else who could actually
that's the nub of this entire debate, is where do you put the pendulum between ultimate freedom and ultimate commitment to the community? And I think at the moment the pendulum is swung far too far away from individual liberty and towards this notion that we're actually all sort of cogs in wheels that have to protect the wheel. You know, it grates on me that I have to isolate, wear a mask, everything else, because someone else is afraid of getting the virus. If they're afraid of getting the virus, they should stay at home. If they're vulnerable, they should take precautions to protect themselves. It cannot be up to us as individuals to be looking after society broadly, continuously.
I think that's down to collective responsibility. We live in a society where we
that's
do
socialism.
our part. We live. Well, I am a member of the Labour Party.
Amanda, then, if you're talking about collective responsibility, we heard yesterday, didn't we, that the jab has been approved by the MHRA and it's been authorised for rollout to younger 5-year-olds, clinically vulnerable 5-year-olds. Would you support the wider rollout for children down to age 5? You're talking to me about collective society and about transmission. Would you advocate that 5-year-olds, healthy 5-year-olds, should be receiving this jab in order to protect other people?
I don't think I can say that because I think it's an individual choice of parents. I'm not a parent, so I don't know how I would feel if my 5-year-old was being put up to vaccination. I think what we do need to do is look at the data and the impact and see where other countries have vaccinated younger people and the stop of the virus there. Because I know that teenagers are receiving the virus and that has stopped transmissions in schools.
But yeah, see, I find that fascinating. I've got a child. There's no way on this earth I would, as things stand today, inject him. Nowhere with this
and that should
vaccine.
be okay. And that should be okay. And we should never force anybody to get a vaccine.
Yeah, I think parental freedom is really important in this, and I think it's very often undermined at the moment in all kinds of different ways. And I think what parents need to do is, you know, like I know, you know, like when my son was ill, you know, I made judgment calls that was based upon my relationship with my wife and my son, rather than what anybody else said. And I think that's what good parents try to do. I think what's really important in this discussion is that we have to get this. We have to understand that freedom is logically prior to anything else. That's the
freedom's what?
Logically, that's the foundational value on which everything else is.
But what I didn't catch what you said. What is freedom?
Freedom is like the basic for the basis for everything else. So if we give up a bit of freedom, sorry, then basically we're finished. And I think that as long as we are committed to both individual and social freedom, then I think you and I and everybody else can make their decisions on the basis of our circumstances.
Yeah, but I do think, I was going to be really upbeat today, but I do find it very peculiar the way that we've, I would say, almost sleepwalked into the fact that the freedoms, something that we would have previously taken for granted, has now become, you've got these governments, globally by the way, that to me, they seem to be drunk on power. Their first instinct is to remove these freedoms, and if you're good, if you do what I say, then, I might let you have your Christmas, or I might do this, or I might do that. And I find it a little bit, talk about overstepping your mark, and I wonder how, and if we will ever go back to how things used to be.
Well, we're not gonna go back if we kind of stand up and fight against this, because what we've seen is two things. We've seen the sort of the medicalization of politics due to public health, and public health has become politics itself. So everything is about following the science, following public health, And we're given these so-called experts this incredible authority to dictate the most intimate aspects of our lives. And what we got to do is actually say, at the end of the day, it's citizens like you and me who elect politicians who make decisions about our future and about our destiny. And I think that somehow in our society we lost sight of the importance of democracy. This is an issue.
We have. This is an issue of democracy, absolutely right. And the fact that Whitty and Vallance come on the podium at 5 p.m. with the Prime Minister and hold forth as if they're elected officials, making policy without actually having stood for Parliament, is completely wrong. And I'm going to digress slightly.
That's all right.
There is another very critical component to government's ability to lock us up, and that is the printing of money. You know, this huge experiment of locking the country up could only have been possible with the Bank of England doing its quantitative easing exercise. And what people haven't really appreciated, I think, is that QE, coupled with the 80-seat majority that Boris Johnson has created the ability for government to act as a banana republic. We've printed our way through lockdown. We've created all sorts of long-term economic problems. And I think that lockdowns of the nature that we've just had, governments may well try them again, but they will break the economy. And at some point, that economic gravity will come into play. And the democratic deficit that they've been able to exercise so far will evaporate. And people like Boris Johnson, people like the government who've introduced these lockdowns globally, they're going to come into the crosshairs of being damned by public opinion.
Yeah, and what I found also interesting, we talk about freedom. I've found it quite fascinating what's gone on globally in terms of people almost revolting, standing up and saying no to some of these measures. The big protests, you've seen protests, pretty much in every country now, including in this country, and they very, very rarely get covered in the media. Very, very rarely. When they do get covered in the media, they get smeared as, oh, look at those anti-vaxxers. What then happens is if there's a minority of incident, which I obviously don't condone, but if there's a minority of incident, that's what the media hook onto and say, look at these kind of violent anti-vaxxers. And actually, I found that really very distasteful and quite wrong, actually, because there's a lot of people that have really disapproved of the direction of travel, and it just hasn't had a fair hearing in a lot of the media, I believe.
Well, look, if you have 5 people demonstrating against climate, for environment, they will be like headline news, and the BBC will give it 15, 20 minutes, every single day. All you need is 5 or 6 protesters, that's it. If, like last Saturday, you have thousands of people demonstrating in London for freedom, against the lockdown, all they literally show is a couple of people having a go at the police. And you would imagine that these were just a bunch of nutters, some kind of extremists out on the street who you could just marginalize and ignore. And I think there's a real double standard that the media has embraced, whereby some demonstrations, some protests get a lot of coverage, they're okay, but the ones they don't like are treated with contempt and entirely ignored, so the viewers don't get to see that there are other people out there demonstrating who think the way they do.
Yeah, interesting. And Sheila's just emailed me. I find this quite interesting. Sheila's saying she's very disappointed that this show has basically degenerated into what she's saying is an anti-vax diatribe. She goes on to talk about the positivities of vaccines, asking what's wrong with me and why do I keep peddling my unhelpful personal narrative. Well, Sheila, what I would say back to that is this whole kind of label of anti-vax, I just find it a little bit silly because nobody on this panel is anti-vax. In fact, actually, you just said Frank said that he would have the vaccines over and over and over again. And I think Pimana was saying something very similar. So there's certainly not an anti-vax narrative on this programme at all. And also, I would say that there needs to be a real key distinction here between people can be pro-vaccination and actually have had many vaccinations and be reluctant or hesitant about this new vaccination for a variety of reasons. One of them may be that, for example, there is no long-term data. So for me, when I talk about my child, I would not give my child this vaccination because simply there is no long-term safety data, point 1, and point 2, he's not at risk of serious harm of this illness. Having that perspective does not make one an anti-vaxxer. And I get a little bit tired with the laziness of the insult. So absolutely feel free to disagree with my perspective, but do better than just applying the anti-vax label, because it gets used to shut down debate. And actually, I think that what needs to be happening right now is debate and conversation with a variety of perspectives. That's my opinion, and you can tell me yours. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Going to take a very quick break now. When we come back, we'll be talking about cities. Do you even know what makes a city versus a town? And if you're going to tell me it's cathedrals, I'm going to tell you that you're wrong. We'll be looking at what is going to be the next, or which are going to be the next cities. We'll have that and more after the break. Don't go away.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs and Co. I'm fascinated by lots of your emails that are coming in. Lots of different perspectives coming in, which is what I like to see, because there shouldn't ever be just one view that's the right one. You know, we live in a varied society and everyone has different opinions based on their own personal experiences, and that should be just fine. Shane has said, the biggest issue I feel right now that's going to affect us is the amount of NHS staff currently off work isolating. I think that you speak a lot of sense there, Shane. This is going to be a big risk, actually, not just to the health service, but to the broader economy. I think the whole kind of isolation thing. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that over the coming weeks. Anyway, let's change topic, if we will. There's a tradition that you might be familiar with, which sees a select few UK towns becoming cities. This is happening again next year in celebration of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in June 2022. For the first time, though, British overseas territories and Crown dependencies are eligible, and thus Stanley in the Falkland Islands, almost 8,000 miles away, has been one of the places to apply. And there's also been entries from Gibraltar and Georgetown in the Cayman Islands. 39 places are vying for the honour of city. What do you think to this? Should Britain's cities, should they be located abroad, or do you think it should just stick locally? What's your thoughts, Frank?
Well, I'm a very big fan of Port Stanley.
Are you?
Because the inhabitants of Stanley were extremely brave and resilient during the war with Argentina, when the Falkland Islands were invaded. And when you looked at the interview of these people, they really struck me as being, sort of really down-to-earth, honest, strong individuals who had a capacity of pulling together. And in particular, the reason why I'm so into the idea of giving Stanley a city status is because not only do they live in very insecure circumstances, a long, long, long way away from Britain, but also because they represent a kind of Britishness, which I, as somebody who comes from outside of Britain, can really appreciate, in the sense that the kind of courage and fortitude, sort of good sense of humor, that kind of common sense that people like me really value about British society, which is often threatened in the contemporary circumstance. So I kind of worry what would happen if Britain or some other part of Britain got invaded and faced those kinds of challenges, whether they be as able to stand on their 2 feet as the people in Stanley did. So to me, I think that symbolizes something very precious.
Do you? Do you agree with that?
Well, I agree for slightly different reasons. I think the Falklands War is, it's iconic in a sense in British history. It's the last time the United Kingdom went to war to protect its own territory. And Port Stanley symbolises the Falklands War. It is also, and I'm going to come to Brexit in a second, it is also in stark contrast to British government policy now over our territory. So, we launched the entire British Navy, Air Force and Army to protect 3,000 people 8,000 miles away. Roll the clock on 30 years, and we find our British government giving up Northern Ireland to the European Union. 1.8 million people right at our doorstep, part of the United Kingdom, under the hegemony of the European Union, under the European Court of Justice, without a single shot being fired. I mean, the political swing and political will, the weakness of our political will over the last 30 years is signified, I think, in the contrast between what we were prepared to do for the Falklands and what we're not now prepared to do for Northern Ireland. And so I think Port Stanley is a great example of a place that should be made a city, even though it's only got a population of about 2,500 people.
Yeah, it's got a very small... I've got the figures here, and I'll look for it whilst Pimana's talking. But what's your view? And I'm going to look for the population of...
Well, I don't really mind if Port Stanley is considered in this lineup. Any British territory should be on the list and considered by the Queen as being given city status. But I think this really speaks to the levelling up agenda. And if the government really does want to level up, then it should go to a town that would benefit from city status, where the economy would specifically benefit. So I think we should look at the merits of why these towns should be given
But what am I
city
missing,
status.
Pimana? Because to me, city status doesn't really get you very much other than the kudos of being a
I mean,
city.
this
What am I
sounds like it's
missing?
quite symbolic in terms of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. But city status you could benefit from more government support for businesses and various other grants that you could potentially apply for. And
So
also
you
the
get
pull.
you get more business grants if you're a business in a city. I'm not seeing it because I wasn't aware of that.
But there are economic benefits to being a city rather than being a town. And if the government can give that to a town that actually is in need of it, it would fit in line with the levelling up agenda. I think that's where we should be going.
I think a
towards.
city also gives people a kind of confidence, a kind of boost, that yesterday we were a town,
Yeah.
today we're a city. I think that makes them feel really good. It raises their esteem about who they really are. I think that's why it was very important to give South End
that was David Amos's campaign, wasn't it?
That kind of consideration. So it's a symbolic sort of step, but it's something that can have a big impact on the inhabitants. And I also agree that the levelling up agenda means that we should look very, very carefully at some of the deprived places in the Northeast and elsewhere, for example, where a lot of people could really use a boost, especially after 2 years of lockdown. But having said that, we should not be too promiscuous in giving away, sort of city status just to anybody, just because it makes them feel good. Because we've got to kind of treat it as a very special and a unique kind of symbol that we kind of projecting.
But I think because of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, this is more symbolic, especially with the British overseas territories.
Yeah. Well, Milton Keynes, they've applied. Why do you laugh at Milton Keynes?
I shouldn't laugh.
No.
He's not getting any votes in Milton Keynes, that's for sure.
No.
Is there anyone in Milton Keynes? The reason I mention Milton Keynes is because they're very keen on the city honour, and they've applied again.
Have they?
It's not happening for them. They don't seem to be getting much traction there. I don't quite know why, but they're trying very hard. They've submitted a bid again.
Yes.
But yeah, so you think it's more than just ego and a bit of status, do you?
Yeah, but ego and status is actually quite important, especially in our dark times, just to make you feel good. It gives a bit of a buzz to a place. And I think when you talk to people in Essex, I think the events in Southend after that terrible murder, it really gave them a bit of a lift. And I think that's how we got to look at this. And
yeah, I see the Southend one. I do get that because that was David Amos's kind of passion, wasn't it? He said he would never kind of give up, never give in. He would just keep going and going until it happened. So I get that. But I'm not sure if I lived somewhere that was a town and then it became a city. I don't know, if I'm honest, if I would wake up the next day feeling any different.
No.
I'm not sure I'd care. But maybe that's just me being unsophisticated and uninformed. If you live in a town now and you woke up and you was one of the lucky few that got awarded the city status, would you feel different? Would you have a sense of pride when you woke up the next day? I'm fascinated and intrigued. Get in touch with me and let me know. GBViews at gbnews.uk. You can tweet me. Lots of you are getting in touch with me. David says that he agrees with me that he would be gutted too, that Coldplay are going to stop doing music. I actually really love Coldplay, and I was so surprised to see that so many people have really seen it as a good thing that they're going to stop doing their music. I found it really bizarre. I just had a great email as well that I wanted to read out from William saying, Michelle, give the man on your left a kiss from me because he speaks true sense. What your guest on the left is saying is level-headed and speaks much sense, and I wish the government was made up of such. Our country would be in a much better position if he was, says William. I don't know who you mean, though. I don't know if it's my left or your left, so I think for, for
well, we both
safety,
get kisses. We both get kisses.
I think for safety, I'll give neither a kiss there, William. Yeah, I think I'll give neither one, but I'll share your sentiment nonetheless. Ben, this is Gillian. She's saying that you should be in charge of running the country. Lots of people think that you should be in charge of running the country. We want Pomona. We need some praise for Pomona, don't we? What's going on?
I don't think I'll be getting any praise.
Why? Oh, I'm going to find some. I'm going to find some for you. It's nearly Christmas. I'm going to find your praise. Dale has been in contact saying, I am triple jabbed, Michelle. And I was at the Freedom March in London the other day because I was so angry about our loss of freedoms. Vaccine passports and the constant attack on people who choose not to be jabbed. I believe in freedom of choice and I hate the current discrimination. Dale, I am completely with you on that one. I did a whole piece on this yesterday. I think we're heading on a very slippery slope at the moment. We really are. We're kind of, we called it the Great Divide yesterday. It is very much an us and them. And I think, what do you think to that, by the way, Frank? Just the whole division of someone, in this case, someone that's chosen not to be vaccinated, that whole kind of discrimination of them.
I think it's very disturbing. And I, not just that, but I think it's very disturbing that our society has become so polarized between people who love wearing masks and people who are against it, because it's just a thing. But the really disturbing thing is the way in which people talk about individuals who haven't been vaccinated as if they're a lower form of human being. And I think when we have that kind of contempt for a section of our society, it is a kind of prejudice that's legitimate. It's probably one of the few prejudices that is legitimate, and we should really call it out.
Yeah, it's very strange. I was talking about yesterday an article in a newspaper. I'm supposed to be going to the break now, so I will shut up in a second. But I read an article in the newspaper a couple of days ago that was saying about if you've got an unvaccinated member of your family, some tips about how you could deal with them and what you do with them and all the rest of it. And I thought, God, is this really what we're becoming? You know, my take on it all is no one knows what's around the corner. We've had an awful 2 years. Embrace your family and love your family, because we just do not know what next year has got in store for us, do we? Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to get a little bit festive. I want to get a little bit good news. You're up for it, aren't you, Frank?
Absolutely.
Good. OK, well, when we come back, we'll be looking at some stories that have made us smile today. So don't go away.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs and Co. Now, before I move on, very serious matter that we need to contend with. I don't really pay much attention to polls normally, but on this occasion I'm going to make an exception because I think it's very important. Christmas dinner. When you have your Christmas dinner, this is a very important debate we need to settle here. What is the most important part of it on your plate? There is a poll that's been conducted that said roast potatoes came out on top. 88% of people said that that was their most important part of the dinner. The main meat of choice was turkey, 54%, gravy, carrots, stuffing, sprouts and pigs in blankets, also rated highly. So, Christmas dinner, Frank, what is your favourite part of it?
Well, I love roast potatoes, but once a year I buy a goose.
Do you?
I love a goose, and nicely roasted. You know, so it takes a long time to do, but it's so delicious. And then I make the stuffing, which is made of chestnuts and prunes.
Is it?
With sausage meat and a bit of breadcrumbs. And, you know, it might sound funny, but it's delicious. You know, the goose and the stuffing together are amazingly delicious.
That sounds very nice. Going to come round to your house then on Christmas Day, I think. Ben, your favourite?
Well, we used to scrap over the stuffing when I was a child. We used to fight over who could have the most stuffing. But the thing that really amazes me about this this survey is that Brussels sprouts comes out on top of pigs in blankets.
Yes.
I mean, what's happened to the country? Why do people want to eat Brussels sprouts over
I blame
pigs in
Brexit.
blankets?
My brother's so against...
You blame Brexit.
My brother's completely against Brussels sprouts. He doesn't even want it at the table. But I actually love gravy. Gravy is like my favourite.
Gravy is not your favourite part of Christmas dinner.
The more gravy, the better.
Yeah.
No, but it can't be your favourite part.
But it's my favourite part of the dinner. I mean, yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I always thought
Love
that was quite a
gravy.
northern thing, excess gravy on everything. I think roast potatoes So I'm with the 88%. Yeah, roast potatoes, I think, but they've got to be done in a certain way.
They've got to be done well. They've
Very,
got to be
very,
done well.
very particular. I make great
Very
roast
nice.
potatoes.
You've got to invite us over then. When...
Well,
you put goose
you
fat
can
on
come
it.
to Hull. I do.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I do very briefly, because I know we've got other matters to contend with rather than my roast potatoes. Parboil them, dry them, shake them, put some flour on them, goose fat obviously heated up in the oven.
Crispy.
Bosh, that is your, there you go. That is my Dewberry top tip, how to do your roast potatoes. You're very welcome. Anyway, there was a couple whose favourite thing is to escape in their camper van over the Christmas season. I've got to say, I bet there's a lot of people that can resonate with that, because there's so many arguments about where do you go for your Christmas day, who do you spend it with, which family. Well, this couple, you know, they've got the answer to that. They just head off on their camper van, off they go, look. That's how they do their Christmas dinner, look. They cook an entire Christmas dinner outside on their barbecue. I'm not actually sure how you could cook a turkey on a barbecue. You'd give yourself, you'd be there all...
Be a long time.
You'd be there all year.
You need a very big barbecue for that.
Yeah.
Also, it's so cold.
Yeah.
It is cold.
Yeah. Whatever floats your boat, I guess.
Yeah, indeed. But yeah, I bet there's a lot of people that sit there going, that's a great idea, camper van Christmas for me, don't have to deal with the in-laws. Another story that caught my eye, by the way, and you might have seen it if you're on social media, this was on Twitter. There's a guy called Harry Beardsley. He met a 28-year-old homeless man called John yesterday. Took him to the pub for lunch, some beers and a few games of pool. And then Harry went on Twitter and basically said, look, found this young lad, would like people to come together, maybe a few quid, see if there's any work opportunities, etc. Anyway, long story short, it went viral, had a huge reaction. Lots of people responded. They've now got him a deposit for a flat, some rent, a job offer, and a bit of spending money. And I loved it. I loved that story for him because, you know, life is not nice sometimes, and Twitter in particular can be a not nice place to be. So when I see it being used for good, it makes me smile, it makes me happy.
Yeah, it shows you that, you know, on a good day, social media can be a wonderful medium through which you sort of help people out, publicize grievances and difficulties that people face. And I think these kinds of stories are so good because it tells us that at the end of the day, most of us in this country are nice, responsible people. We actually care about homeless people. We care about people who are living lives that's not really as good as ours. And sometimes we can go out of our way and do the right thing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Ben, people, you know, I've always found people's attitude to homeless people quite peculiar. It's almost as though they're different to someone that's not homeless. And actually, I found that very wrong because all of us, you know, we're in a situation where, I don't know, you might have a good job, you might have a partner, you might have a family. It only takes for one of those component parts to go wrong.
Right, yeah.
And then people can spiral. And, you know, you go on these spirals, and before you know it, you're in a situation where you will be perhaps somewhere that you never thought would happen to you.
Life is very fragile.
It is.
And what's wonderful about these stories is that, you know, Christmas is the season of giving. And that's a real gift this chap gave this homeless 28-year-old. You know, he's a young man, homeless, very young to be, no age is a good age to be homeless, but you know what I mean, 28 is very young. So I think it's it epitomises everything that's good about the Christmas season.
Yeah, and hopefully, you know, he's got the component, the jigsaw parts now to get his life back on track. So he's got a deposit, he's got some spending money, and he's got a job opportunity. And those kind of things, if they work out, then this time next year, that person's life could look very different. So I thought that was very nice. And I do think, actually, Pemana, we do need to pay more attention to homeless people because most people will just walk past them in the street and not take the time.
Yeah, and there's really complex reasons why some people might become homeless. You know, I deal with homeless constituents all the time as a counsellor, and there's various different reasons why they fall through the net and the gap, and why they can't get government support. And so I think this is a real show of the power of community and what community can really do and step forward to help him, especially in getting that job. I think that really will set him on the path of recovery.
Yeah, I saw another story as well about a postman. I wonder, do you tip your postman? What about your bin man? Or do you do Christmas tips? Is that a thing these days? There's a postman who's received almost £2,000 in tips to help fund his wedding. residents teamed up as well to try and raise £100 Christmas tip. This is for the postman Phil Hammonds in West Sussex. But as I said, they ended up raking almost £2,000. And I thought that was very lovely. And I did think to myself, do people still tip in that way? Ben, do you still tip?
Well, I don't. I used to. It was a thing at Christmas. You always tipped the milkman, the postman, the dustman. You always did. It was one of those things we grew up with. But life has become quite impersonal in the last few years. That's what I find. And I used to know all their names. I don't know their names now. They're sort of impersonal. They come, they do their job, and they go away. But I'm going to look out for them this Christmas.
Yeah, because I have to say, I feel a bit tight now and a bit mean, actually, when I see those people there with their £2,000 collective donations. But I don't actually tip, and I think next year I'm going to have a word with myself, Pamana. Do you? Do you tip those kind of service people?
I think it's important to tip service people because they do a really tough job, especially postmen. But I think the bottom line is that people shouldn't have to be asking for tips or for donations when they have a job, and they should be getting a decent salary to do their job. I think it's about a decent wage for a decent job.
Yeah, but everyone, I mean, at Christmas, it's a little bit different, isn't it? To me, it's at Christmas, it's a little bit, you've done your job, you've done your graft, you've got your money, and now it's like a little bit, actually, here's a little bit of extra recognition just to treat yourself to something nice, whatever it is, bottle of something, or in that case, a contribution towards a wedding. Anyway, there's another quick story that I want to share with you as well. A friend of the show, you might have seen him, James Anderson. This is a plumber from Burnley. He's been a great story, this. I tweeted about it as well a few days ago. He's been helping the vulnerable and the elderly this Christmas. He's been doing it actually since 2017. He has a GoFundMe page, and people can donate and pay for costs of repairs for local people who are disabled and elderly. Because I've got to say, anyone that's had a plumber out recently, it costs an arm and a leg. And you should go and check them out, actually, on their Twitter page. I know I shared it a couple of days ago. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's just real, heartwarming stories. Another one of our viewers got in touch, Lindsay Hopkins got in touch, was sharing her story. This one made me smile as well. She's got a dog called Charlie. It's had an awful time. It's had lots of things going on just over 2 years ago. And I was hoping, oh, there you go. That's the dog there. Look, Lindsay says that Charlie couldn't walk, couldn't wag his tail. He was paralysed. And this video shows his road to recovery over the last few weeks. He's managed 2-kilometre walks just with his legs, without his wheels. I love that. Absolutely love that. You go, Charlie. Look at him. Very sprightly little thing, which leads me nicely onto my next story about pets. Does anyone on the panel have a pet?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
You don't? You've got a pet? What have you got?
A dog and a cat.
You've got a dog and a cat. Well, the reason that I ask is I wonder, when it comes to pets and spending money on pets, people are spending an absolute fortune. £2,200 on a Louis Vuitton dog terrier.
That's crazy.
Rock stud collar and leash sets for nearly £1,000. Luxury cushions for garden swing chairs. Look at this one, Lola, the Maltipoo. What's a Maltipoo? What's a Maltipoo?
I don't know, but it sounds bizarre.
Have we got a picture of this Maltipoo? If not, it's going to be a very strange story. I was going to show you this Maltipoo. There you go. Look at that. Yeah. This dog has got £500 worth of presents, personalised Diamante encrusted Crocs to pad about on, a £30 teepee to use as a den, and a £130 travel pod to ensure she travels in comfort wherever she goes. I think some people have got more money than sense.
Well, not just that.
I do.
Clearly.
I mean, my wife suffers from canine addiction.
From what? Canine addiction?
Yeah, she loves her dog.
Right.
And she'll do anything for that dog, to the point at which, you look at the little presents that she buys and the little coat for the dog and the new collar. Not as expensive as those. But the really interesting thing was that last week, the so-called dog club in our rec organized a birthday party for one of the dogs. And they managed to sort of essentially construct and bake a birthday cake.
For a dog?
With candles, yeah. Really bizarre, totally bizarre.
Wow.
And if you looked at the cake, it was the kind of a cake that I would eat. It looked delicious, sort of that marzipan, chocolate, everything else on it. And the dogs were just kind of sitting around, and before you could say cake, They were all in there.
They were in there. Well, that is, there you go. Beverly's emailed in saying, Michelle, my husband and I are disagreeing about the colour of Frank's shirt. I say it's blue, he says it's green. Please tell us who's right. I would say it's blue. Bev, you are indeed right. Trisha's been in touch saying, I've tipped our bin men for the last 2 years, especially all the overtime they're putting in with COVID. And Sue says, my postman is miserable. He's a miserable so-and-so, so I'm not going to tip him. She says, well, there you go. Anyway, that is all I've got time for. It's my last show before Christmas. So, panel, thank you very much for your company. And thank you at home for your company. I love hearing from you every night. Thank you very much for supporting GB News. We very much appreciate it. Have yourself an amazing Christmas. And any kids listening, don't you worry about all this COVID stuff. Santa will definitely get to you. He will definitely deliver your presents, but only if you've been good. Have yourself a wonderful Christmas, and I will see you in 2022. Take care.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Outbreaks of rain and hail snow will affect the far north of Scotland overnight, much milder elsewhere, and fairly foggy in places, whether that's hill fog or low-level fog by the start of Christmas Eve. You can see the mild air across much of the UK, but cold air continues in the far north of Scotland, and with these weather fronts bringing spells of rain from the southwest, well, they're going to increasingly mix with the cold air, and so the snow level coming down through the night across northern parts of Scotland. Expect accumulating snow above 300 metres, 2 to 5 centimetres possible, and 10 centimetres above 500 metres. So watch out if you're travelling on some of the higher routes in northern Scotland on Christmas Eve morning. Otherwise, some dense fog to look out for first thing across central parts of the UK, and a lot of cloud, low cloud covering the hills as well. Some damp weather there for northern England, much of Scotland, but it does peter out. Whilst another active band of rain moves in through the afternoon, southwest England into Wales, central southern England, Northern Ireland later on. That is accompanied by gusty winds. Mild air in the south, staying cold further north. And it's a repeating pattern over the next few days. We've got these active weather fronts moving in, and then they stall